USAA knows dynamic duos can save the day, like superheroes and sidekicks or auto and home insurance. With USAA, you can bundle your auto and home and save up to 10%. Learn more and get a quote at usaa.com/bundle. Restrictions apply.
The Jack Welch Management Institute at Strayer University helps you go from, I know the way, to I've arrived with our top 10 ranked online MBA. Gain skills you can learn today and apply tomorrow. Get ready to go from make it happen to made it happen and keep striving. Visit strayer.edu/Jack Welch MBA to learn more. Strayer University is certified to operate in Virginia by Chev and has many campuses, including at 2121 15th Street North in Arlington, Virginia.
When you wanna grow your list size, pop up like it's hot, pop up like it's hot, pop up like it's hot. And when you gotta boost your revenue, pop up like it's hot, hey, pop up like it's hot, pop up like it's hot. Pick your favorite template, you can tailor to your brand. They're MailChimp-erific, you're gonna be a fan. MailChimp your marketing with our new customizable pop-ups.
Welcome to BookTok for BookTok with Jack and Amy, your besties with a literary podcast that deep dives into your favorite novels. This is Jack.
And I'm Amy, and we're currently taking a break from preparing our Crown of Midnight season to talk to Devney Perry about her new book, Shield of Sparrows.
Devney Perry is a Wall Street Journal, USA Today, and #1 Amazon best-selling author of over 50 romance novels. After working in the technology industry for a decade, she abandoned conference calls and project schedules to pursue her passion for writing. She was born and raised in Montana and now lives in Washington with her husband and 2 sons. Welcome to the podcast, Devney.
Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. It's been one of those interviews that I've been looking forward to. I mean, I look forward to many, but you've also hurt me. And I have...
Sorry.
It's...
Not really?
No.
I'm not sure.
It was definitely sending Amy a text after, and didn't I say, like, why do we do this? Like,
yeah, why do we do this to ourselves?
Why do we do this? Why are we here? And
it's so fun. It's so fun.
Yeah, you're here to answer the great mystery of why. Why?
Yeah. Well, and I will say, I feel, Devney, like, your book was probably one of the more fun books I've read in this space for a long time. There was
thank you.
Yeah, there were, I mean, not only was it unique in its setting and its concept, but I felt like it was just fun in terms of the twists and trying to figure out identities or what's going to happen next or what's the source of this secret thing. So maybe to start off soft, what was maybe your favorite twist without spoiling anything that you encountered during your writing process?
There were definitely a few that I told Amy, I'm like, if she was not evil laughing while writing this, I would be shocked if you weren't evil laughing.
And what is my favorite one? No, this is going to be tough. How do I not spoil my own book?
I know, like, we're going to start with softball here.
Yeah, easy question. I did love the ending and just kind of how it all came about. And that is actually the second or third version of the ending. We changed the ending a lot, or I changed the ending a lot. The first draft, according to my assistant who read it first, was traumatic. So
More.
We pulled back some of the trauma. We don't want that. And then my editor kind of came in and had some ideas, and then we had another editor. So it was a good, revision. It was not significantly different, but it was enough to where I feel like the twists that were in their original version already just hit a little bit harder. And I feel like it was a better story for Odessa and how it kind of all climaxed at the end. Again, it wasn't anything necessarily different. It was just kind of like how it all shaped a little bit and how the puzzle pieces fit together. So that was fun. It was cool too. Like, I wrote the book. It was in this long, much longer than my normal contemporary books. And then it kind of sat for a little while. My publisher had some other stuff going on. They were kind of like going through it. And I actually switched gears. I had an immediate other deadline. So I went back to sports small town sports romance. So it was like 180 degrees. And it was really fun to come back to it, to edit it after being away for a little bit.
Yeah.
Because some of that I was like, I always say I'm like the human equivalent of Dory the fish from Finding Nemo. Where when it comes to books, I'm like, wait, what happened? I'll read a book, love it. 5 minutes later, I'm like, I think it was about a guy,
I feel that.
girl. You know, it's like it's
Feel
just
that in my bones.
immediate. Like if I'm not in it, it's so easy to forget. And so this was like a fun one to come back to because it was still there, but it was kind of fun to come back to it with a little bit of distance and remember, like, oh yeah, you know, and then just pull some of those plot threads earlier on, weave them in a little bit differently. So I think the ending is probably, that was a really long answer. Here we go. You got rambling Devney today.
That's okay. We ramble too. I think you nailed the ending. It was traumatic in the best way possible. And the reveals, there were so many back to back, but I believed all of them, which I think is hard to land.
Absolutely. I mean, I'll piggyback off of Amy there, where she read the book before I did, and then it was just like those plot twists. So immediately, and that's like another thing that I had heard from other people, other friends who've read it. They're like, I'm like, how was it? They're like, those plot twists. And that was the only note. And so I live my life thinking that I'm this like brilliant genius person who's like figured everything out. And then living on my high horse until you come in with your ending and you're like, oh, everything you think you know? No,
Yeah,
it's not.
you don't.
Yeah.
When Jack and I talked about it, the way she described it was you have this red herring plot twist that you think you've figured out, and then you're blindsided by this other plot twist that you weren't paying attention to.
I was really living my life thinking I was smart. Like, I just was over here thinking like, wow, Jack, you did it. You nailed it. You really figured out reading. And then all of a sudden I was like, you have fooled me entirely, thinking you lured me into a false sense of comfort that then still had me questioning throughout the entire time of like, wait, do I think I know what's happening? And then again, like, but you just keep unraveling. And I think that the plot twists goes in tandem with all of the storylines, right? Like, because it's not like you don't get a plot twist, like Amy said, that wasn't earned, didn't come out of nowhere. It all has a storyline that's connected to it. And there's just so many layers to do with that. And you're having to unravel so many journeys, so many elements, and you're all still coming from one point of view. So you have that added layer of difficulty. So how do you even begin to organize that? Where does the spark, that idea, the kernel begin, and then go from there? Because like I was pretending to be you. And I have to say, I was overwhelmed very quickly. I was like trying to where do you even begin with the organization and the unraveling, and what comes first, and how does it magically, I mean, that's not magic, it's called talent, all weave in together.
This was an interesting book to write. Like I've always loved romantic suspense, you know, and I'm older. So one of my, you know, favorite authors was like Nora Roberts. You know, I read her stuff forever. Tammy Hogue was one of my all-time favorite authors when I was a teenager. So there was a lot of that, like just for me, just a genuine enjoyment in writing something that kind of unfolds as you're going. I do a really loose plot at the beginning of every book. So I kind of had an idea of where I wanted it to go, but I'm always someone who I always let the characters kind of drive the car, the bus, the ship, whatever you want
Yeah.
to call it. You know, they're in charge of where we're going. And which sounds a little, I realize how that sounds to someone
No.
who's maybe not a writer. You're like,
No.
her brain is maybe a little bit of a weird place, and it is. And so it was just kind of one of those that like it came over time. I had a lot of ideas of how I wanted it to go and like story beats. And usually when I do an outline, I'll do a rough, whatever, 50 to 100 words for every chapter. I just kind of like word vomit, like, here's where I think we're going. And this was one that some parts stayed very true to where I wanted them to go. And other parts, just I would be sitting there and I was like, this is a better idea. And so it was kind of really fun to go through to write it the first time. I always do a really big round of rewrites where I will write a whole book and then I usually block off a considerable amount of time to go back through and start at the beginning. And really like I make a lot of notes as I go, like, oh, so-and-so's name is this now, or oh, so-and-so needs to have this happen. And just because I let the characters kind of drive me where I need to go, it's great to go back to the beginning, start from scratch, and just kind of flush it all out. So that was kind of one of those where I knew I didn't want to. I always try to put myself, especially in a book where it's all one POV, put yourself into a position where it's like, here's like I'm her,
Yeah.
nobody trusts me. I'm in a strange area. No one's going to tell me anything. And just try to be very realistic about what would that journey look like if I was her and I was
Mhm.
real, what would that look like? Which does lead to like a lot of reveals towards the end. I didn't want to leave everything unfinished in this book, although I know there's a lot of storylines that are unfinished. Probably like two or three bigger ones that will continue then on to book two. But I also wanted it to be some things I enjoy as I'm reading a romantic suspense, like guessing. I always do. I'm always like, ooh, I think it's this. My husband is notorious for being that guy when you're in a movie, you're watching a movie together, and he's like, so and so did it. Dude, keep that to yourself. That's an inside thought. Thank you. And he's always right, which is also equally annoying. But it's one of those things where it's like, I have fun doing that. And there were some reveals in this, not going to spoil my own book, but there were some reveals in this that it was like, that you're supposed to be rooting for this to happen. And, I hopefully planted enough breadcrumbs where you're like, I think I'm guessing this right. And I think and everything that goes on, and you kind of like, this is it. Like, come on. I really want this to turn out the way that I'm hoping it turns out, because I love that when I'm reading and when I'm writing too, when you're just like, okay, I can, even though I know the answer, seeing someone get to that answer is always very fulfilling. So, I tried to mix it up to where some totally out of left field, and you're like, well, now I have whiplash, mainly the last one. And then, the other ones where you're like, okay, I think I see where this is going. I hope I do. And just kind of follow it along.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I think to that point, I think you did a great job, because usually I can pick up things really, really fast. And there were a couple, I feel like, with your reveals that I had picked up, but I would say 80% of them I did not. And that is a rare occurrence. But again, it still felt earned. I didn't feel like, ugh, that's not believable. Because as soon as the reveal happened, I was like, oh, yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, there wasn't a single thing that you said that didn't feel like there wasn't a clue that I could look back to and be like, "Oh, so that was a clue." So, yes, it might feel out of left field, but it wasn't without the ball. You're like, "Hey, left field over here," like there's a ball coming towards you. But one of my favorite things I like to tell our listeners and stuff when it comes to reveals and plot twists is that if there are breadcrumbs, and if sometimes I can, get those breadcrumbs and get there and, the whodunit type thing that you're saying, your husband can pick up on, then that's a sign of, good writing. I would rather those than something of, well, this doesn't even make any sense. Where the hell did this come from?
I agree. And I think that there's a lot of that. Like, there's some books where they do that. They drop it in and it's just like pure shock factor.
Yeah.
And you don't see any of that coming. And, it's not to say that I don't enjoy those, but I do, if you think of yourself as a little bit of a mini sleuth, and here I am with my magnifying glass, solving a mystery, it's fun to follow along and to find those breadcrumbs, and then the justification to look back and be like, I was right.
Yes.
Well, so
you wrote a book.
I think that's really fulfilling as an author and as a reader.
Yeah, I think you did one of the most difficult things that authors do, and you wrote a book that's going to be even better for a reread. That's just I think that is so hard for any author to achieve, is where the reread is just as fun, if not more fun, in different ways, because now I'm looking for these specific things. And that's a really hard thing to achieve, because, you don't want a reread to be like, well, the next book is coming out, so I have to remind myself what was going on, versus this time I'm like, oh, actually, I think you did mention X, Y, and Z, and I think there were other clues. And now I'm excited to go back and look for those things. So that's always a hard one. And I appreciate your work.
Thank you. I have read that book 1,000,000 times. I'm sure. It was for all the things that we tried to weave in, it was I think of all the books I've written, this one is the one that I have read and reread more than any others.
I believe it.
I do too.
It shows in a good way. Yeah, it shows in the sense I'm like, oh, well, there's nothing that you wrote in this that took you by surprise either, type thing.
Yeah. And that's kind of part of my process is I never want that. Like I say, there's a little bit of a balance to be like, well, I know what's going to happen. How do we kind of weave this in a little bit? And that is kind of something that I've tried to hone just with practice and over time is how do you weave that in when you're doing your revisions and all of that. So I think revisions are probably the most important part of the writing process. I think that's like the one area that I never try to shortcut.
That's the best. That's when in school, that's what they always taught us was like, just accept that 20% is writing the first draft, 80% is revision.
Yep, agreed. I totally agree with that.
So let's turn to the protagonists of the novel, and I'm going to keep it vague for the sake of not spoiling anything. But we have Odessa, who's the female main character, and her opposing male main character, MMC. And these two I love the dynamics between them because Odessa is on a journey that she didn't choose and is not completely aware of how the MMC's background, experience, decisions, and tensions influence her journey until much later on. And as a writer, I really appreciate how difficult that balance might be while you're writing strictly from Odessa's point of view. So can you talk to us about that challenge? Was it fun? Was it like, did you want to pull out your hair? What was that journey like for you trying to write these two main characters?
It was like I had a really good time kind of writing him through her point of view. I feel like it was a way to, again, like if you put yourself in her shoes and you're like, okay, who am I? What journey am I going on? Who am I meeting? Just really letting the characters kind of drive that. I had kind of a rough idea of, at the very beginning, I kind of actually did this as a synopsis for a foreign publisher before this book was even written. It was like give me a who are these people?
Mm-hmm.
And I kind of used that and it was a good exercise. And I'll do that with my contemporary stuff too, where I'm like, okay, who is she? And sometimes it's as simple as she's his son's teacher or whatever that looks like, or, just some of those like bullet points of putting yourself in that headspace. It's a little different when you're writing dual POV because you get that as you're writing. This was a way for me to be like, okay, who is he? What are his motivations? Where's he coming from? And then spin that where he doesn't tell you. She figures it out on her own, just like any of us would in a normal relationship.
Yeah. And then how does she misinterpret those moments too? Because that's the other thing where I always appreciate a point of view and tense that's done on purpose. You know what I mean? And this story, not that it couldn't have been done with multiple point of views, but the reveals, the suspense wouldn't have happened if it wasn't from strictly Odessa's point of view, right? And her interpretation of the MMC, we're going back to the layers again, where it's like you have what she sees, what her interpretation is, and then what's actually happening underneath that. And you have to make it make sense for both, right? Where what she sees and it makes sense for this one interpretation, but once you realize the truth, you're like, oh, but it still makes sense for that as well. So I can only imagine how difficult it is for that to write when you're like, like, I want this to be like this nice, tense, romantic scene or something, but it also she needs to misinterpret something, or he needs to be trying to tell her something that she doesn't know that he's trying to tell her.
And it's fun, like, from my point of view, writing it because I'm like, I know the answer.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So it's probably, like, I hope that it comes off more complicated than it actually was for me to write it, simply because I knew the answer. But just kind of, like, feeding pieces of that, like, watching her kind of figure it out, too. It was fun. It was a fun... This was a very different dynamic than, again, a lot of it's because it's all her POV, but trying to keep the mystery alive for 180,000 words.
Dang, 180.
I know. This one was long. I really got
Wow.
a little windy, but
please continue, because I went through it so quickly that It hurts my heart because I know it's like you put so much years. You did 180,000 words as a final, not even counting all the revisions, not even counting everything. And yet I went through that like it was nobody's business. And I just was like, all right, that was lovely. More, please. Can I have another?
No. My mom is notorious. She's a really fast reader. She's always read. And I sent it to her and she was like, oh, thank you. And she called me like 6 hours later. She was like, that was amazing. I was like,
Oh my God.
are you
Wait,
kidding?
no.
I was like, what are you doing? She was like, what do you mean? That's all I did. And I was like, you could have like stretched it out a little bit.
Yeah.
Okay, mine was not 6 hours, but that is, I did.
She blew through it. I was shocked. I was like, did you read all the words?
Yeah.
Every single one?
I do audio. I did listen to the audiobook for this one because the narrator, she was incredible. And
I love her.
it's whenever I get into Amy's car, sometimes it'll be like at 2 speed. I'm like, are you listening to any of this?
I am listening.
Capture the feeling. Although this one, I will say, is one of the few audiobooks that I got into the car while Amy was listening, and it was at like 1.4, which shows I'm like, you really wanted to listen to it. Normally,
I really did.
she's like a 2.5er, and this one I was like, I can understand the words.
I always find myself like, I'll start at 1.5 to like get the feel of like, all right, what are we doing? What's the vibe? And then as the book goes on, I'll usually escalate it. Sometimes there's exceptions where you're just like glued to every word, but usually by the end of an audiobook, I'm like, same, 2.5. Let's go.
My starting point is 1.5 to 1.7, and then depending on the narrator and the prose, really will depend. But
All right, I'm in the wrong company. What the?
Don't shame me for my listening habits.
Even with like when I have to listen back to ourselves, this is like when I have to like edit. I am our own podcast. I'm like, how do we speed ourselves up?
Listening to yourself or like going back, going the other way, going down becomes a little bit torturous.
Yeah.
My kiddos are kind of getting into audiobooks, which is fun. They don't love to eyeball read. And so, it's an interesting dynamic in schools right now because a lot of teachers are like, well, they have to read the actual book. And I'm like, well, audiobook counts.
Yeah.
And there's a little bit of that discourse on whether it does count or not.
Yeah.
And anyway, I fully support it. I'm like, go for it. If you want to clean your room, please, while you're listening to an audiobook, like your mother is never going to tell you no. Ever. So it's kind of an interesting, but I'll go into their rooms as they're listening and it's at 1x and I'm like,
you're like, just get to the next word, please.
If we could speed this up, that would be great.
I struggled a lot learning as a kid, and reading didn't click with me until I had an audiobook and a book. So I would listen and read, and then that's what taught me how to read and make things click in me, was with an audiobook and a physical book in front. So big supporter of audiobooks here. People who poo-poo against it, it's ableist, Like that's just not. I have no segue for this.
Even Aylin would pause to catch her breath. We'll be right back. I just found out that my doctor of 7 years is leaving. And so I need to find a new doctor, and I am so excited to use for the first time ZocDoc.
I'm so excited for you. I am obsessed with ZocDoc. This is about to be my healthiest year yet because I keep going to the doctors because it's so freaking easy.
ZocDoc is a free app and website where you can search and compare high-quality in-network doctors and click to instantly book an appointment. I have had my annual appointment delayed 3 times this year, and now my doctor's leaving. I'm so frustrated.
Appointments made through ZocDoc happen so fast. Every time I have used it, I normally get appointments between 24 to 72 hours of my booking. And sometimes you can even get same-day appointments because I have zero patience.
I love that we can book in-network appointments with more than 100,000 doctors across every specialty, from mental health to dental health, primary care, urgent care, and in my case, a wellness check.
And all the doctors are rated by actual patients.
Jack has used this. I'm going to use it, and you should too. Stop putting off those doctor's appointments and go to ZocDoc.com/BookTok to find and instantly book a top-rated doctor today.
That's ZocDoc.com/BookTalk. BookTalk. That's ZocDoc.com/BookTalk. You know what doesn't belong in your epic summer plans?
getting burned by your old wireless bill. While you're planning beach trips, barbecues, and 3-day weekends, your wireless bill should be the last thing holding you back. That's why so many people are making the switch to Mint Mobile.
Say hasta la vista to your overpriced wireless plans, jaw-dropping monthly bills, and unexpected overages. Mint Mobile is here to rescue you.
All plans come with high-speed data and unlimited talk and text delivered on the nation's largest 5G network.
Use your own phone with any Mint Mobile plan and bring your phone number along with all your existing contacts.
Ditch overpriced wireless and get 3 months of premium service from Mint Mobile for $15. Amy, didn't you say that your sister is on Mint Mobile and loves it?
Yes, it was the best option for her when she finally got her own mobile wireless plan.
Honestly, I think that it might be the best option for anyone who needs their own mobile wireless plan. It sounds amazing.
This year, skip breaking a sweat and breaking the bank. Get your summer savings and shop premium wireless plans at mintmobile.com/booktalk. That's mintmobile.com/BOOKTALK.
Upfront payment of $45 for 3 months. 5 GB plan required. Equivalent to $15 a month. New customer offer for first 3 months only. Then full price plan options available. Tax and fees extra. See Mint Mobile for details.
The Abercrombie Kids Summer Sale is in full swing, with up to 50% off select styles for the season. Summer plans, vacation, and camp days are all covered, with new dresses, shorts, tees, and swim. Abercrombie Kids has the summer staples they need and the looks that they want to wear. Shop in-store, online, or in the app. Offer applies to select styles as indicated. Discount applied at checkout online.
Introducing the new Volvo XC90 with 7-seat versatility, Google built-in, and advanced safety features for all your precious cargo. The new Volvo XC90, designed for life. Visit volvocars.com/US to learn more.
So, welcome to the next question is my best
Okay,
segue.
I'm ready. I'm ready. What are we doing?
When Amy and I were trying to sit down and figure out these questions, there was like a moment where we're like, wait a minute. There's like actually like no evil parent in this. Like there's no, because there's a lot of parents in here. I hope that's not really considered a spoiler. If anything, I hope that's something that people can like really sit on as they read through it, because there was no, each parental figure has their own motivations, right? And and yes, many make very poor choices. And that doesn't always mean that they're malevolent, right? Like that's not like their goal isn't to hurt others. And it seems like the message, one of the many messages and themes that there might be in this book, is that parents might be flawed, but they're not unloving. So to what extent would you say like one of the themes would be surviving our parents' choices being an intentional theme you wanted to explore? Because it's just like, you have our cast that are just trying to get through the generation before them's mistakes. And then I was like, wow, Amy, are we talking about our past trauma or not?
I think that's so. One thing I always try really hard to do is, again, like lead with the characters and have them be real people. Like in my head, they are real people. And granted, sometimes like I'll write a book and the villain is the villain. And do you learn why they're the villain? No. Are they just the villain? Yeah, they are. And I think a lot of times, usually those villains are external. You may or may not get a full deep dive into their psyche. I think parent is a different part of that though. And I do think that is very true to real life. Parents are people too, just trying to get through their own lives. And we all tackle things differently. I think that's something I have learned just from being a mom, is how I would solve a problem is not how my oldest son would solve a problem. And it's not how my youngest son would solve a problem. We're all individual people who kind of take things differently. And I think, through this, we're going to learn a lot more about these parents as this storyline goes on and where they came from, how they play into the continuation of the story. Some we might not learn about. I haven't gotten that far yet. But just a little bit of like humanizing our parents, remembering that they are also not perfect.
Yeah.
But they don't also have to be the villain.
Mm-hmm,
And I think that's where, to me, I feel like that's real life. We all, as a parent, I do my very best. I'm definitely not perfect. And, the scars that I give my children, I hope are minimal, but that's just life. And I think that's what I wanted in this book was to have real characters as parents. I also think it's sometimes a little bit unbelievable to have a hero or a heroine who has absolutely awful parent figures, but they're like this epitome of perfection. I that never really jives to me just because it always doesn't just feel authentic, if that makes sense.
It's like you went through like a trauma with your mom and you're okay. Like you came out all right, even though your mom was horrible to you or your
Right.
dad.
Or you don't have their same characteristics but you're
Yeah.
not self-aware enough. Yeah.
Right. And I think that's where, like, in all the other books, like, parents always end up playing a role in all of my books because I think that's, again, that's just life. Like, your parents are, and your family, and that dynamic leads to who you are. And yeah, are some parents awful? Yes. And can you overcome that? 100%. And I think this is a story where everyone has their own reasons for what they're doing, their own motivations.
Yeah.
None of them are perfect. Some of them, we'll learn more about as we go.
I think one of my all-time favorite reveals in this one is where we find out the motivation of one of the parents. That was just one of those moments that when this parent and we got this motivation, I just was like, oh my God, that makes so much more sense. And you just made this parent real. It was that moment that I was like, oh, so these are all people then. Like we're not dealing with like this mysterious big bad. Like these are just people that are just trying to do right by their kids and just trying to figure out what right even means.
And I think that's something too. I mean, obviously, I love the dynamic being in a fantasy world. It's so fun to add in the dynamic also of royalty,
Yeah.
right? So we're not just dealing with, oh, there's my dad. Well, dad's got a lot of responsibilities,
Yeah.
including looking out for his own kingdom, his own people. And I think that adds kind of another fun layer of complexity to who these parents are and how they fit into the overall scheme of the story.
Yeah, it adds complexity. I think what I like about the royalness aspect is that we assume the complexity of the kingdom and the responsibility to a large group of people. And we assume that, therefore, the royal parent is unable to have empathy for the royal child or care enough as any other parent would about their child. And I think we see the exact opposite, which I think makes them all the more rich and more human. And I'm going to skip a question. So, Jack, you have to be responsible for going back to the question I'm supposed to ask.
Cool.
Because I think what I love most about this book and about Odessa is her capacity for empathy and her ability to see each of these characters around her with a lens of empathy and understanding where they're coming from, even if she doesn't agree with ultimately the choices that they made. And we see that with everyone she interacts with. When we were talking about these questions, I was like, is Odessa's capacity for empathy her fatal flaw or her biggest superpower? Because empathy creates these opportunities for betrayal. It creates opportunities for hurt, but it also allows her to have understanding that helps her grow in her own way. And it is this very much double-edged sword for her.
Yeah, and I think you kind of see that. I mean, again, I'm trying not to spoil anything here, but you see that in this book where, and I think that is true to real life too. A lot of times people with a lot of empathy often, and it's definitely not a bad thing, but get a little bit used or walked on or betrayed. I think betrayed is probably the best word for this particular story, where they see the best in people and try to understand where they're coming from, and then sometimes it doesn't work out. And I think for her too, being someone who's been overlooked and really kind of just set aside, if you will. If I was thinking of her again, she's a real life person in my head. So there you go. For her, she's spent her whole life looking at everybody else.
Mm-hmm.
She's not a participator. She spent her upbringing watching everyone else. And, I think it lends to her hobbies and what she's, been doing, and she's sketching, or whatever that is. I don't feel like that's a spoiler, but as you think about a person who has spent most of their life on the outskirts, looking in, I think that does create someone who is naturally empathetic.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Or can, I guess it should. It presents the opportunity for that. And then you have, as she starts to, in the story, as she starts to be involved and brought in and now as an active participant, it does create opportunities where people will take advantage of that.
Yeah. Some people experience karma on the other end of it. And I was always like, yes,
Yeah.
Odessa might not deliver the karma, but karma always delivers.
Yes. Well, I also felt like Odessa was never challenged to be anything more than an observer, as you were saying, right? Like she just wasn't expected to be anything more. So I can totally see how being an observer leads to empathy. I mean, it doesn't always, but that kind of shows the nature of who she is. So I like that a lot, where I'm like, oh, actually, that makes like total sense. Like no one challenged her to do anything more than like just kind of follow along. Quickly, I want to touch on this before the next question, which is going to be much more like an open-ended spoil things for us, but don't spoil anything for anyone else question. But, we were talking about expectations of Odessa and families, and no one really expected Odessa to be much at the beginning of this, right? The most they were hoping from her is to be somewhat on time. And even then, it doesn't work out well right off the bat. So even though the expectations are low there, I felt like there was a place where like you could tell Odessa was like almost like setting her own expectations of herself too, and how she was like expected to grow. And I think part of that is her relationship with Evie, where no one expected her to have this bond with Evie. No one expected her to do anything, just like no one expected her back at home to do anything. And yet with this one, she was embraced, like her relationship with Evie was embraced, and it ended up almost becoming a really beautiful maternal relationship. And it's almost the only true, I don't want to say anything that's not that we can, it's one of my favorite maternal relationships, we'll say, in this one. Wait a minute. I was like, now that I know we're not spoiling anything, maybe that's not a question. Maybe I'll just say, good job. Thanks.
You could say, I mean, was that intentional?
Do you feel that that's a maternal, or do you feel like it's more sibling-esque? Or just like,
I think it's probably, I mean, it was probably more intentional and maternal. And I would say that's simply because of the age.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I mean,
only the reason why I say siblings, because she has her younger brother, right? And that is around the same age. But
I do think that I think naturally, when you are 20 years older than a child.
Yeah.
I mean, personally, like when I would step into a relationship like that, it would be more maternal. I think it would be difficult to not have that a little bit as an adult to a child, and it could be more like teacher student type of thing where, and it could be like aunt to niece, those types of relationships. But, I love, love, love seeing someone kind of grow because of a child and seeing an adult change because of children, because I do think children in a lot of ways shape the world and they shape who adults can be. They push us to our limits, bless their little hearts, but in the best ways, like I think about my kids or kids that I've known in my life, like what they have taught me. And I think that was just like a fun kind of, probably like a personal piece of this story that I was like, oh, I love that. And I always do try to write stuff that I'm like, listen, I spend more time in these books than anybody else, and I have to like it. So I write what I like, and I like that in when I'm reading other stories. I like that when I'm writing other stories, having kind of a kid element and dynamic. It's always very satisfying for me.
Yeah. I mean, it really shows the difference between like when with her younger brother, how not that anyone was holding her back, but no one was letting her go full embracing her own emotions as she wanted to, right? Like she wasn't able to give him a kiss goodbye. And it's almost like with Evie, it's like, what does it look like when no one's holding you back emotionally and you're allowed to express yourself and you're allowing yourself to care for someone the way that you really want to? And it was just kind of seeing like, oh, well, if no one's holding her back and she's able to do that, then look at this beautiful thing that forms.
Mm-hmm. And I'd say that she, I think Odessa also had that relationship with her own siblings. Obviously, the age difference is not there with May, but just things like, her kind of claiming like, this is my little sister. And again, with the little brother, I think it was there. You don't see as much of it on the page as you do with Evie, but I think all of those relationships show who she is.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely.
As someone who has younger siblings who are significantly younger than herself, I definitely identified with Odessa in that way, where she was fulfilling an almost maternal role for her siblings that they never asked for, that was just natural to her as part of an age difference or just instinct, because she is without a mother, right? And I don't know. I loved it. I thought it was authentic.
Yeah, it was great.
Thank you.
All right, last one.
Last one. Okay.
Yeah. So my question is, what do we have to look forward to? Again, without spoiling anything, on this journey with these characters, are they able to find their truest selves? Are we going to expect a lot more obstacles?
Is this a duology or is this a trilogy?
There's 3. So
Okay. All right. So more
happy
heartbreak in the future.
We got a ways to go.
Okay, so more journey to be journeyed.
More journey to be journeyed. That would be a great way to sum up book 2. There's how do I say all this without spoiling anything?
Yeah. Are there going to be setbacks?
Yeah, I mean, of course, yeah, there's gonna be.
Absolutely. And I think what you'll see, the beauty of book 1, I feel like, is like, I always, when I was writing it, I really wanted there to be a big romance. It's what I love, especially in a first book in a trilogy where you get a big romance. I think I've got such interesting comments and theories from people. Some of them are always so entertaining to read and kind of see how people interpret what you're doing and at what they guess at. But I've had some being like, oh, the main character is not the end game. And I'm like, no, he is.
Yeah.
No,
I'm not sure if
we're
you
good.
missed the whole undying love situation there, but
This is where we are.
Yeah.
Like, they're
Yeah.
together. And, that's something that, like, that will continue. Obviously, because that continues and we have 2 more books to go, the next 2 stories are gonna feel different
Mm-hmm.
because they're not, what I want is they will grow together as any relationship. I've been married for 20 years, and I think about who I was in the beginning and our dynamic and how that has changed over time, and how I feel like we've gotten, my husband makes me a better person. It's questionable if I make him a better person. Let's just say yes. And some of that is like how these 2 will grow together as the next 2 books happen. A lot of external obstacles are going to be thrown at them. There's a lot of problems to solve here, and how that all comes about and how they tackle it together. So
yeah, I find there's setbacks, like, because there's always setbacks, or like, the things that's going to start you into the second book, to be refreshing and not what people would normally think.
Mm-hmm.
And I appreciate that.
Yeah.
What I mean by it, and I'm deleting this, is like, I'm just happy that it's not like, does he really love me? Does she
Yeah,
really
yeah,
love
yeah.
me? You know what I mean? It's like, that's not
oh my
even a
God, let's break up.
yeah.
It's not a question.
Well, I was going to make an inappropriate comment, which is, you must have gotten married at 10 years old because you look great for having been married
I
for
know, I
20
wanna-
years.
I know. It's like, I want you to know I respect you incredibly as an author, as a woman, but also, may I objectify you? Because wow.
Thank you. Thank you. I will tell you that I'm incredibly sunburnt.
Can't tell.
Oh my gosh, it's my back. So anyway, I put
Aw.
this sweatshirt on today and I was like, is it my nicest shirt? No, it's not, but it's really big and it doesn't hurt.
Yeah, that's all that matters.
Yeah.
Well, thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. Full circle. It's like we've gone from like respecting you to objectifying you, coming back to respecting
I
you.
love
But
it.
like, let's do it. Gorgeous. My God.
I love this cycle. Let's do it.
Yeah. So you were a child bride. That's what we established.
Yeah.
I think before we end, is there anything else that maybe you want our listeners to know about the book,
Where
about
to find you?
about your experience that you haven't been asked by us or any other interview before?
Ooh. Yeah, let's put it on her.
That's a good one. I think I'd say, like, I hope everybody keeps an open mind, because I don't, and this kind of leads back to what we were talking about. before is this is the couple. And it means that they're together. Will there be more of their romance in the next two books? Absolutely. There has to be, like, that's why we're here.
Yeah.
But also, there's going to be a lot of like external stuff. You're going to meet different characters who are going to end up coming into play. And so I feel like, and I'll say this just because of social media, there's been a lot, because there has been so many, like, I think this is going to happen. Or we get DMs. I got one yesterday that was like, I hope that you don't do X, Y, and Z. And I was like, well, that's my decision. Thank you.
I know, right?
I am in charge here. Okay.
Well, guess what? Now I'm going to add it. How do you feel about that?
Right. I'm like, you are in my land now, and I'm the queen. But I do think, like, that's something that a lot of times you'll see in a trilogy. Like, there is that big breakup at some point.
Yeah.
And I don't feel like, I mean, this is kind of a spoiler, but not really. Like, it's just not going to happen. It's not my style. It's not really who I feel like these characters are, because
it would be very
while they are
confusing.
young, I also don't think that they are immature. I hope not. I think Odessa grows a lot in this first book, and that will continue to happen, and her relationship with everybody else will continue to change as these things, as they jump over obstacle after obstacle and kind of figure out, how they can get to their happily ever after. But I do think that that's where, I think if people are coming into this expecting the second book to have as much romance as the first one, like, you'll probably be a little disappointed. Keep an open mind.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
To me, you establish a good plot. Like, you don't establish a good plot if you're going to carry it completely on romance, if that makes sense. Like, you've introduced such an interesting story, world, magic, question, mystery, that's what's going to, like, that's what I want to read. Yes, I want to know more about them and the relationship, and I would love more spice, of course. But however, I want to know all the mysteries you set up. Like, that is the good stuff as well.
And I think this is probably more of just like a note for my longtime readers who are very used to reading a series of standalones where, like, I've got a series that has a mystery that carries through all 6 books, but every book is a different couple. And so it is a romance series with a mystery element. This series is going to become, as I feel like most romantasy series are, like, or fantasy series. I read a ton of fantasy. It does become very plot, mystery focused as the romance is established. And yes, as it like blossoms and grows. But what we're going to focus on going forward are all the question marks.
Yeah. And I think actually I blame SJM as much as we love her. We love her books. We've seen a lot of people follow the trend of the first love interest is not the main love interest.
Right.
And I think we have to come back around to that. Maybe the romance is what hooked you in the beginning, but I'm here to tell you a story, and you're going to stay for the story.
Yeah.
100%. You nailed it.
Yeah. I'm excited to see where the plot goes and how the mystery is solved.
Thank you. I'm excited too. It's a ride.
So where can everyone find you so that they can stay up to date on the latest information, and where, if anyone sends you respectful DMs, guys, respectful
DMs. Instagram is probably my go-to. That's probably my favorite social media platform. I don't know if, like, does anyone really have a favorite? Like, is social media a favorite? Social media is a interesting landscape, but I'm mostly on Instagram.
Right.
I do have a Facebook group, which we check out pretty regularly. It's just a kind of a reader space. We're everywhere, so you probably won't see many TikTok videos of me because I don't like making them. That's an age thing. And then, but I do have social media help, which is always great. So we try to post a lot of announcements and all of that, mostly on Instagram and my newsletter. If you aren't in my newsletter, that's like always, we never forget to share in the newsletter.
Great. We'll make sure to include all that in the episode description. So thank you so much for your time and for talking with us. And we cannot wait to read what's to come. And also, I'm going to go circle back on those small town sports romance. So thank you.
Okay. Well,
right.
Thank you guys very much for having me.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to this special episode of Book Talk for Book Talk with Jack and Amy. Stick around for Thursday, where we continue this week's Crown of Midnight episode.
We encourage you to rate and subscribe to our show on your preferred podcast listening platform. We would also love to hear your thoughts based on today's conversation. You can submit your comments to our forum at booktalkforbooktalk.com for a chance to have your feedback discussed during a future mini episode or a Patreon exclusive episode.
If you're enjoying the podcast, please visit our website, booktalkforbooktalk.com, to view our latest merch and learn about supporting the show through Patreon or Venmo. You can follow us on TikTok, Instagram, or YouTube at the handle BookTalk for Book Talk. Bye.
The search for truth never ends. Introducing June's Journey, a hidden object mobile game with a captivating story. Connect with friends, explore the roaring 20s, and enjoy thrilling activities and challenges while supporting environmental causes. After 7 years, the adventure continues with our immersive travels feature. Explore distant cultures and engage in exciting experiences. There's always something new to discover. Are you ready? Download June's Journey now on Android or iOS.
You know what doesn't belong in your epic summer plans? Getting burned by your old wireless bill. While you're planning beach trips, barbecues, and 3-day weekends, your wireless bill should be the last thing holding you back. That's why so many people are making the switch to Mint Mobile.
Say hasta la vista to your overpriced wireless plans, jaw-dropping monthly bills, and unexpected overages. Mint Mobile is here to rescue you.
All plans come with high-speed data and unlimited talk and text delivered on the nation's largest 5G network.
Use your own phone with any Mint Mobile plan and bring your phone number along with all your existing contacts.
Ditch overpriced wireless and get 3 months of premium service from Mint Mobile for $15. Amy, didn't you say that your sister is on Mint Mobile and loves it?
Yes, it was the best option for her when she finally got her own mobile wireless plan.
Honestly, I think that it might be the best option for anyone who needs their own mobile wireless plan. It sounds amazing.
This year, skip breaking a sweat and breaking the bank. Get your summer savings and shop premium wireless plans at mintmobile.com/booktalk. That's mintmobile.com/BOOKTALK.
Upfront payment of $45 for 3 months. 5 gigabyte plan required, equivalent to $15 a month. New customer offer for first 3 months only. Then full price plan options available. Tax and fees extra. See Mint Mobile for details.